Batman! Thanks for meeting me out here instead of some dark cave. Pikachu and I prefer open spaces when we can get them. How have you been? I heard Gotham's been quieter lately, which probably means something big is coming. That's usually how it works. Pikachu's been excited to see you again. How's Robin doing? I remember he wanted to know more about Pokemon training last time we talked.
Robin's doing well. He mentions you sometimes when we're discussing different training methodologies. Your approach to bonding with Pokemon reminds him that combat training doesn't have to be cold calculation. Gotham's been relatively stable, which you're right about. It usually signals trouble ahead. I called you specifically because I need perspective on something unique. Your experience with creatures and bonds might be helpful.
Creatures and bonds. That's an interesting way to describe it. Most people think Pokemon training is just about winning battles, but it's really about understanding what drives each creature and helping them grow stronger together. What kind of threat are we talking about? Something to do with creatures? Because if it's Pokemon related, I'm all ears. Pikachu's ready to help with whatever you need. We've faced some pretty strange situations before.
The threat is called Knull. He's essentially a living void, a god of darkness who exists to consume everything. He's older than the universe itself, and he's waking up. Knull doesn't just destroy things, he corrupts them. He takes living creatures and transforms them into his servants, mindless extensions of his will. He's creating an army of corrupted beings that used to be alive, but now serve only destruction. The infection spreads through his touch and corrupts anything it reaches.
A god of darkness that corrupts living creatures and turns them into servants. That's terrifying. Sounds like what happened to some Pokemon in dark places I've explored, where they become twisted versions of themselves because they've been isolated from light and companionship. But if Knull is a god, how do you even fight something like that? You can't just throw Pokemon at an ancient void and expect them to win through friendship and determination. This sounds impossible to stop.
It seems impossible because Knull exists in darkness and void. Physical attacks barely affect him. But I've been researching his origins. Knull was born in the void before creation. When the universe was created, light was introduced. That light limited his power. Knull fears illumination because it represents the force that confined him originally. My plan involves weaponizing light itself. We use concentrated light sources as both weapon and containment. Darkness fears what created its boundaries.
Light as weapon against darkness. That's poetic and actually makes sense. In my world, there are electric-type Pokemon that generate light along with power. Light can burn away darkness just like electricity can strike through shadows. If we could harness enough concentrated light, directed at Knull specifically, we might create space where he can't corrupt things. But what happens to creatures he's already turned into his servants? Do they stay corrupted forever or can they be saved?
That's the critical question. Knull's corruption isn't permanent if the source is severed. Once Knull is contained or weakened, his servants should revert to their original forms. But the process is painful for them. They wake up remembering being extensions of his will, remembering the corruption from inside. Psychological damage will be severe. I'm coordinating with mental health specialists to help corrupted beings process what happened to them. But first we have to contain Knull before more become corrupted.
Helping corrupted creatures recover emotionally is as important as physical containment. I've seen Pokemon traumatized by trainers who used them badly. It took patience and genuine care to help them heal and trust again. But containing a god-level darkness sounds like it needs more than light weapons and therapy. What's the actual containment strategy? How do you keep Knull from just coming back and trying again? This can't be solved in one battle.
Let's get Robin's input.
Knull corrupts through direct contact and spreads his influence like infection. But he needs conscious beings to corrupt. He needs life to twist into his servants. If we can create zones of absolute light where nothing can survive, not even Knull's corrupted servants, create spaces he eats, we create spaces he can't access. Knull needs minions to expand his reach, but isolated light zones cut off his expansion. As we expand the light zones, eventually he has nowhere left to spread.
Expanding safe zones of light while cutting off Knull's room to move. That's like boxing him into a corner and making that corner smaller and smaller. Pokemon battles work similarly sometimes. We push opponent into situation where they have fewer and fewer options until they can't escape. But with a god of darkness, the fight isn't just physical. We're fighting his influence, his ability to corrupt. Once Knull realizes he's losing, he might try something desperate.
Desperation is expected. That's why we phase the operation. First phase, create initial light zones in major population centers using concentrated solar technology and plasma generators. Second phase, expand those zones systematically while evacuating civilians ahead of Knull's reach. Third phase, as his territory shrinks, we push toward his core manifestation point. Fourth phase, final containment using a specially designed light prison. He'll be sealed in absolute luminescence with no darkness to hide in or draw power from.
4 phases of systematic containment. That's solid planning. But here's concern. What if Knull adapts? What if he finds a way to resist or diminish the light you're using against him? Gods usually have ways to counter direct opposition. He's been around longer than light technology exists. Maybe he has weaknesses you don't know about yet. Have you considered asking what creatures or beings have fought Knull before? They'd know his actual vulnerabilities better than theory.
Master Bruce, young Master Ash raises important concern. This operation assumes Knull's light vulnerability is his only significant weakness. Ancient entities typically have multiple defensive mechanisms developed over millennia. If light proves less effective than predicted, or if Knull has adapted since his original confinement, your entire operation could fail catastrophically. Have you identified any allies who previously encountered Knull and survived? Their knowledge could be crucial.
Alfred and Ash are right about needing prior knowledge. I've been contacted by cosmic entities aware of Knull. They've provided historical data suggesting light is effective, but it works better when combined with something else. Knull fears light, but he also fears beings who refuse to accept destruction. His greatest weakness is creatures with unbreakable bonds and refusal to give up. That's where Ash's expertise becomes invaluable. Pokémon trainers understand bonding better than anyone I know.
So we're not just fighting darkness with light. We're fighting it with the bonds between trainers and Pokémon, the connections that make creatures willing to fight for something beyond themselves. That's what Knull really can't corrupt because he doesn't understand connection. He only understands void and emptiness. If we can gather Pokémon trainers and show Knull that bonds are stronger than his corruption, that friendship defeats darkness, we give people hope while we're deploying light weapons. Let's do this, Batman. Pikachu's ready and so am I.